The blue of Vidar's eyes stared into the empty room, reflecting the eerily circular moonlight. Inside the narrow tower, Vidar was standing in the middle, motionless, staring fixedly at only one point. It's the bookshelf in the corner next to the window. Vidar started walking slowly, then knelt down, staring at the shelf, some of which were empty. Contrary to what I thought, there is nothing special in this forest, that day. The day he first met Presepe, got the notebook she dropped, and discovered a truth he never could have imagined. Since then, Vidar has been keeping tabs on Presepe. He saw her safely through her childhood until the end of her training, and he watched her begin to woo all the male figures, starting with Dietrich, just as Fenrik had done. In the end, everything was identical to what was written in the notebook. However, a part of him still refused to believe it. It can't be like this. This is not fair. For me, who has spent thousands of years alone, for this to happen, it's so cruel. He needed other proof, other than the notebook that Presepe dropped. One thing is certain that prevents him from even clinging to false hope. Just like Fenrik, Vidar knew everything that would happen in advance. So, he also knew that one day Presepe would return to this tower. Please, stop. He had seen Presepe sitting on the bed, tormenting and moaning many times. Vidar's discovery of the Book of Memories was before the secret mode was unlocked. Sometime shortly after his immersion in this world, when Presepe was still in the process of wooing Dietrich. In that gap before Presepe was imprisoned in the tower, Vidar had arrived here first. Then discover it. Deep inside the bookshelf, there were new secret mode features, accident record, album, Book of Memories. Things that a player like Presepe could not see clearly. Seemed to her to be just decoration. The reason Vidar was able to recognize her was simple. Little by little. As time passed, Vidar began to disturb the system of the game, until he was no longer under its control. Warning: the password is the hero's real name. In that brief moment, when his mysterious voice spoke his name, Vidar wished not to open the Book of Memories. But it was a futile wish. Vidar. The Book of Memories opened very easily, without any hindrance. Warning: Vidar. The Demon King who lived for thousands of years in the Forbidden Forest west of Atloya. Vidar stared at the window of information about his history, his face expressionless. Warning: in the year 999 of the imperial calendar, Presepe is banished from the imperial palace, so she remembers Vanessa's will and heads to the Forbidden Forest, where she meets him. The course of events in secret mode was different from normal mode. As the information window explains, Presepe will soon be banished from the palace, and that's when she remembers Vanessa's will and heads to the Forbidden Forest, and that's where it all really begins. Because Presepe had not yet entered secret mode, she did not see any notifications, even if Vidar opened the Book of Memories. However, Vidar managed to crack the password, and stood in the empty tower, laughing madly alone for a long time. But even for Vidar, who managed to corrode the system and move freely, one thing was impossible. It is that he cannot change the value of the setting that makes him unconsciously attached to Presepe and fall in love with her. Yes, if that were possible, we wouldn't have arrived here in the first place. Vidar smiled sarcastically. Should I put everything back to the beginning? What if I reset everything? And I made you start over? Will things change then? Or maybe you'll go completely crazy, or completely break down. Moreover, it meant that Vidar had to wait thousands of years again. Vidar certainly didn't want that. It's enough just to bring you back to your original place. You, me, and Fenrik too. Vidar slowly reached out his hand and returned the Book of Memories to its original place. So Presepe can more easily realize the truth. So that he can extract it successfully. The first thing I saw when I woke up was Fenrik's face with his eyes closed. Still in Fenrik's arms, Presepe quietly looked up at him and closed her eyes for a moment. Since Ivan kidnapped her, she had never had a restful sleep. Perhaps it was due to accumulated fatigue, or because she felt reassured by being with Fenrik, but she found herself falling asleep without realizing it. She raised her head slightly towards the window, and saw that the sun had risen high in the sky. What time is it now? She stared at the window for a moment, then returned her gaze to Fenrik. Then she remembered the conversation they had last night before she went to sleep. Because I love Duke Fenrik. She admitted the feelings she had been suppressing, and brought out the truth she was trying to ignore. Contrary to what she thought, the days when she thought it was not permissible for her to say that became meaningless, and she felt a strange lightness in her heart. If she had broken up with him without even telling him that she loved him, she would have regretted it even more. But the truth of her feelings that she communicated to Fenrik was not all she had to say. There was a phrase she could not get out. Namely, she must return to her original world. Later. But Fenrik, even after they had gone to bed, continued to gag Presepe. More talk. Later. It was as if he didn't want to hear a word from her, but she didn't know why. He certainly didn't even know what she was going to say. Then I thought, even if I return to reality, I must never forget this feeling under my hand, and the deep sound that falls into my ears, and also this look that always held a hidden sadness whenever he looked at me. Good morning, Duke. Fenrik did not answer, but merely touched her forehead with his own, then closed his eyes and opened them slowly. Did you sleep well? Fenrik gave a short nod. It was a blatant lie, he couldn't have slept well. Even last night, he woke up several times fearing that Presepe would leave him and run away alone, and he was hugging her as if to make sure she would stay in his arms. And what about you, Madame Presepe? I slept well. In fact, I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep because of the stress, but it seemed that the feeling of security was greater. Because, Duke, you always watch over me and keep me safe. So my heart seems to relax too. As he listened to her warm words, Fenrik couldn't help but smile as much as she did. But still, you will leave me and go. And you leave me alone. Duke? When no answer came, Presepe looked at him with a slightly questioning face. But what she saw was a face that looked completely helpless, something she had never seen in it before. Duke, why since yesterday, Duke? Madame Presepe. The urgent voice came from behind the closed bedroom door. Fenrik immediately rose instinctively, and hid Presepe behind his back as if to protect her, and almost at the same moment Hannah appeared with a pale face. Ha! But before he could tell her full name, Presepe froze as she sat down. The reason was the soldiers standing behind Hannah. Duke Fenrik. One of the soldiers came forward, pushing Hannah, and entered the bedroom with a frozen face, then moved his lips and said, "We are arresting you for the murder of Prince Atari Hannon and Duke Noah Duverne."